Very good. Now we're ready to make the parent constraint that's animated. For the first part of the animation, we want the can to be linked to the floor or to some immobile object. In my layers here, you'll see I've got a background layer, and it's currently referenced, and I can unreference it so I can select that object, and I can make that the target for a parent constraint. I'm on frame 1. I've got the ground plane selected, and I want to shift select the locator as well. With the locator lit up in bright green, go over to constrain parent. Once again, in the options, just make sure that constraint axes are all enabled and maintain offset is on. And now the ground plane is the parent link. I'll undo that movement. Scroll down to the time at which we want the object to be picked up, and that's going to be frame 75. We're going to create another constraint. We're going to link to a different object, and that's going to be the wrist. Select the wrist, make sure that it's selected, shift select the locator, and choose constrain parent once again. Now if you scrub in the timeline, you will see that the can flies around. The reason that's happening is because it's sharing the influence from the two constraint objects. Let's go over here and investigate. If we select that locator and look in its shapes, we will see a parent constraint node. And there are two channels here, P-plane 1 W0 and joint wrist W1. These are weight channels. If they have equal values, then the two parent objects will have equal influence. We can turn them on and off. In this case, what I want to do is have the joint have no influence. Set joint wrist to 0, and the object snaps back to where it was. And I want to maintain a joint wrist value of 0 until frame 75. And then switch from the plane being the parent to the joint wrist being the parent. Okay, so to make this happen, I'm going to go back to frame 1, select both channels, and key them. Channels, key selected. And then go to the point where I want to transfer the link, frame 75, and reverse these values. P-plane 1 will have no influence after this point, and joint wrist 1 will have full influence. Press enter, select them both, and channels key selected. And then after that point, you will see that it's linked to the robot arm. Before that point, you'll see it's still flying around a bit. And that's because the influences are being interpolated. We don't want that. With the locator object still selected, go back into the graph editor. Window Animation Editor's graph editor. And open this up a little bit, and we will see can locator parent constraint. And there's a P-plane and a joint wrist channel. Select those two. And it doesn't matter whether you selected in Translate X, Y, or Z. It's actually the same curves each time. Just select two of those. Press the F key to frame, and this is what's happening. We're interpolating between the weights of those two target objects, or parent objects, from the period of frame 1 to frame 75. They're interpolating. It's easy to fix. Just select all of the keyframes, and then set them to step tangents here, or hold keys. And that way the transfer will be instantaneous. Minimize the graph editor. Rewind and play that back. And it works flawlessly. To conclude the animation, we want to throw the object. We could do this in numerous ways. One would be through dynamics, using a physics simulation such as Bullet. We could inherit the inertia of the robot and use that to drive the movement of the object. But what we're going to do in this case is to hand keyframe it. In order to do that, we're going to actually need to build a little bit more of a rig. Because at this point, if we tried to simply link back to the ground plane by setting these values, the object would snap back where it was at frame 1. And that's not what we want. What we want to do is actually transfer to another object, another parent. And that could be anything. Once again, locator works fine, but we could use a NURBS curve or whatever we wanted. I'm just going to use a locator because it's quick and easy. Create locator. I'm going to rename it and call it throw locator. Set its local scale to be larger than the other one. Let's make it 30. Move it out. And I just want to snap it to the location of the other locator. And maybe I should hide everything in my scene to make that easier. Hide robot mesh. I don't have a layer currently for my rig. Maybe I should do that. I can select that, do that in wireframe mode. Just select the plane because it's the parent of everything and put it on a layer. Create new layer and assign selected objects. Double click that and call it joints layer and save. That way I can hide those joints. And now I can more easily snap to the other locator. In fact, if I want, I can select that cylinder and hide it for a moment too. Set its visibility to 0. And just turn on snap to vertex up here and move to the position of that other locator. And make sure you're at the end of the animation when you do that, of course. You don't want to snap to any other earlier point in time. And once it's there, we can unhide the rest of our objects. We can unhide the can, select it in the outliner, set its visibility back to 1. And then at the appropriate point in time, transfer the linkage. And that's going to be right at frame 95. We want to transfer over to the other locator as the new parent. So on frame 95, select the parent, which is going to be throw locator. Select the child, which is, of course, the can locator. And constrain parent. And once again, we'll need to keyframe. We have a new channel here. We need to go back to frame 1, set that throw locator to a value of 0 on frame 1, select the channel and key it. And then go down to frame 95 where we want that transfer to happen. And set wrist to 0, throw locator to 1, and select them. And channels, key selected. We will need to go back into the graph editor. I've got it minimized. We need to adjust these keyframes once again. Select everything and set them all to step tangents. And then let's check our work. Scroll back. In the period from frame 1 to 75, we should see that P plane has a value of 1 and joint wrist and throw locator values of 0 up to frame 75. Then after frame 75, joint wrist has influence and the other two are 0. And after frame 95, throw locator is 1 and the other two are 0. And then after frame 95, we can keyframe this new throw locator object. I'll unhide my meshes. Go back here and unhide those. Go back into shaded mode with 5 and then 6 and 7 so I can see the lighting. And on frame 95, keyframe the throw locator. And this is going to be position and rotation. Shift W to keyframe the translations. And Shift E to keyframe the rotations. And then just a few frames later, send it out flying. Turn off snapping. Send it out kind of in a straight line. And once again, at a different point in time, Shift W to keyframe and Shift E to keyframe. All right, so let's see what that looks like. So it looks like it's flying out because it's actually easing out and easing in. And it's also moving too quickly. I can make it move more slowly by moving these keyframes down. Hold down Shift and click to the right of that keyframe and then move it. That'll cause it to be at that location at a later point in time, meaning it's moving more slowly. And then with the easing, we go back into the graph editor once again. And here's the throw locator, translate X, Y, Z, select all those. Press F to frame, select all the keys, and just set them to linear. So our animation looks like it needs more fine-tuning, but we've got the essentials here. Maybe it's flying too far and I can bring it back. I can park it at frame 115 and just move it closer. And maybe move it down a bit. And Shift W and Shift E on top of that keyframe will actually overwrite those values. And if I want to move more quickly, once again, Shift Select and move the keyframes earlier. To make this move more naturally, I can go back to the Translate Y attribute here, frame that, and we can try different shapes to the curve here. To fall under gravity, we might want the Translate Y curve to accelerate. So that's what I've done here by moving these tangent handles. I've done a basic first pass on the animation. Let's play this back in all the viewports. Go into the animation preferences. Turn on Update View in all if it's not already. That way we can see the animation in all the viewports. I just want to add a little bit more here to the end. Grab that locator and just create a couple more keyframes. Make it bounce, rotate a little bit in different directions. Once again, I'm rotating the throw locator, and the can locator is a child. Shift W and Shift E to create those keys. Go a little bit later, create a couple more. Shift W and Shift E. Maybe give myself a couple more frames at the end of the timeline here. Bring this out to, let's say, 160. I can also zoom in on time by dragging these handles here. Get in closer here and see what I'm doing better. The animation is complete. We can preview it in the viewport. We'll hide the joints layer, and we can also hide the locators just in this panel. Go to Show Locators, and rewind back to frame 1 and play. Okay, that is our first foray into forward kinematics. We've set up a rig using Maya skeleton joints, parent constrained meshes to those joints, and also used a parent constraint to transfer links across time. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Keep watching Digital Arts Guild. And again, don't forget that lynda.com is a great resource for learning more about Maya. Thank you very much.